Hey y'all, if you own a McPherson guitar or if you've even had a chance to play one of the first things that jumps out to you is how big the bass is on these guitars. I mean, the bass response on these guitars blows me away. Because of that, I often like to play out of a drop D tuning because then we can really take advantage of this resonating D string. And drop D tuning is simply taking our lowest string that's typically tuned to an E note, tuning it down a whole step so that it's now a D note. We get some great sounds out of that. But it also presents a different set of challenges whenever we go to play our chords. So what I'd like to do is talk to you about some different chord positions that we can take advantage of whenever we're playing out of drop D tuning. So let's look at some of those different options for playing chords out of drop D tuning. Typically, depending on the style of song that I'm playing, but a lot of times I'm just going to play a partial D chord. Okay, so that means I'm going to place my index finger on the 2nd fret of the 3rd string, and then my middle finger on the 3rd fret of the 2nd string. And then I'll leave this 1st string open, that E string. It sounds good. That's a D sus2. And for a lot of styles of music, that's going to sound good. Of course, you can always play your full D chord there. Now, this is one thing that I'll really use. If I'm going from a D chord and then the song calls for a G chord, I will often use my bass notes to walk up, and it's really easy to do it, especially if you're playing that D sus2, because I'll use my ring finger to jump up and grab the 4th fret of that low D string now. And often what I'll do is I'll use this fatty part of my ring finger to mute that A string so that my notes sound like this. Of course, you can't hear that whenever you're playing rhythm. And then to go to my G chord, I'm just going to slide that ring finger up one more fret to the 5th fret, and then I'm going to, with my index finger, bar the first 2 strings at the 3rd fret so that my notes sound like this. Muted. Then to get my A chord, of course, I can always come down and get my standard A chord there, or maybe an A sus2 would sound good. But if I'm going to an A chord, especially if it's just for a half measure or maybe 1 measure, I'm going to take this G position that I just showed you, and I'm going to slide everything up 2 frets. So now we have an A note happening down here. And then my middle finger, I'm going to play the 6th fret of that 3rd string. I'm still muting that string, so now my notes sound like this. And when you play it slowly, it kind of sounds like it clashes because we do have this A note in there, or this D string in there. But if you're going fast, it sounds pretty good, okay? If you really have a problem with that, you can always play that 7th fret of that D string with your pinky so that you get the full A chord. Now, for our 6 minor or for our B minor, of course, most of the time you play it down here with the bar chord. But there's a really cool way to play it in drop D tuning, and it's out of this same type of position where you're just going to, we're here playing our A chord. I'm going to slide everything up 2 more frets. Boom. So now I'm up to the 9th fret. Except instead of just barring the first 2 strings, I'm going to move it up and bar the first 3 strings of my 7th fret with my index finger so that the notes sound like this. Mute. So there's our B minor. If you wanted to play a B minor 7, you could mute the first 4 strings with your index finger so it sounds like this. So let's just walk through those chords again. We've got our regular D sus2 chord. We've got our D over an F sharp that I often use to go to a G chord. We've got our G chord, slide to the 5th fret, bar the first 2 strings. Slide everything up for an A chord, place your middle finger down the 6th fret of the G string. And then for that B minor, slide it up 2 more frets, bar the first 3 strings, or the first 4 strings for a B minor 7. So there's really great tools to use whenever you're playing in drop D tuning.